Frank,
What's up?
what's going on, buddy? We have no Tim, no problem. That should have been the name of the episode. Also, I'm realizing that the camera's just a little bit crooked, so you look way taller than me, even though you're always taller than me.
I am taller than you. This is actually the truth.
I can't reach my head to the top of the screen. But listen, we're here. We're doing this. We're live. Frank, you weren't preaching yesterday.
I was not.
What was it like? Was it weird?
It was very chill. I got to sit in these wings side that's on the side of the sanctuary.
I saw that.
And that was great. It's a very interesting vantage point.
What I was going to try to transition into the yesterday was Sunday part, and I completely biffed it. So was it weird to not have like a mandated role since yesterday was Sunday?
And today's the morning after?
Oh, so and this is.
Oh, this is the morning.
Welcome to the Morning After Ministry Show, a caffeine-fueled look back on the week and ministry that was.
Well, hey, everybody. I'm Andrew. This is Frank.
I'm Frank.
Tim is, I would say, on assignment, but really he just sent us a text and said, hey, guys, I'm blowing you off to go to the strawberry festival with my kids.
Eat strawberries.
Whatever. I'm over it. My therapist said if I keep talking about it, eventually the hurt will heal. And so that's what I'm planning on. I'm trying to get comments on the screen. I don't know quite what I'm doing, but it's fine. There we go. Frank was in the Amen corner seats.
I was in the Amen corner seats, and I got to from that vantage point, I just got to see the side of Tim the whole time, but also I got to have like a clear view of the soundboard and the tech area, and I got to see all the nudges of wives telling their husbands to pay attention, wake up, whatever it may be, and then I was also really close to a window, so I could get distracted by. Could
you do your best Eutychus and fall asleep and?
It was a good sermon. I was wide awake the whole time.
Now, did you have any roles yesterday? Were you doing announcements?
No announcement roles. All I did was I tried to be very present in the courtyard for there was this like a ministry fair type of thing that was going on, and so I wanted to be accessible so people can ask me questions about the small groups and young adult stuff, as well as I don't know, help anybody with anything I can out there. You know, there was a sign that was in the wrong place, so I moved it. Was chatting up people who had questions about different things. So, yeah, it was a good time.
I don't know the last time I had a role that I didn't have like a definitive role on a Sunday. It's very odd. Like even if I'm here and I'm not preaching, I'm still
doing something.
I'm still the senior pastor. So I'm doing announcements or call to worship or introducing whoever is preaching.
Yeah.
And so that's got to be an odd thing because you spent multiple services right, at Epicos. Your campus had multiple services.
Yeah.
And so you spent multiple services kind of going through the same routine week after week. And hey, if you don't know me, I'm Pastor Frank and all that stuff. Yeah. And then to sit not in the front row, but like
I was in the back row on the side.
The weird Taylor Swift VIP tent.
Yeah. I got a free water bottle. It was
there.
Cool.
You go.
Yeah.
It's got to be a unique experience.
It is. I don't feel like I'm off. Like I still work. Like in fact, the first service I had my laptop ready because I was worried that like I might have to like fix something with the kids ministry, but that didn't happen. During the first service, I was. This is really boring and niche. I'm
ready.
Fixing our church.
But again, as you always say, like why would you wouldn't listen to a nursing podcast?
Right.
So anyone who's like, this is boring nation, no, like this is for pastors.
Yeah.
So we get it.
Yeah. I mean, so one big project besides small groups that I'm working on is kind of like the infrastructure of Planning Center and the church database. And there's this app attached to it called Church Center. And there's just it's very well established, but there's a lot of like pieces that like need to be kind of like a little wonky. You gotta fix them and stuff.
Little tweaks.
So I spent some time in the first service adjusting a couple things in there. But yeah, I mean, I'm just I got to just be present the whole time, and I told the kids ministry that if I ever need to be called to rock babies or to talk about Zacchaeus or something,
he was a wee little man.
I can go in there and do kids ministry, but. And the worship team knows that, like, if there's a pinch somewhere, I can play drums or hit the space bar. And
I can have good rhythm either way.
Either way,
I can count to 4 or 3 as need be.
Exactly.
Yeah, I imagine for knowing you and we go back way beyond you moving here or even us starting a podcast.
For sure.
I feel like you are someone who likes to go. Like when you show up at church, you're ready to. So
yeah, I do.
It's a different rhythm to have that role.
Yeah, I'm constantly. I mean, look, I will say this, and this is not because Tim's signature is on my paycheck. But
it's not. That's not how they do things. It's a direct deposit. There's no signature.
But his sermons, I enjoy listening to his sermons, and I'm not thinking.
But do you enjoy listening to them 3 times in a row?
I don't listen to them 3 times in a row.
Oh, okay.
I listen to them one time.
Okay.
And unless I'm doing the slides or something, but I listen to it one time, and so that's it's enjoyable. And I'm not. Here's the thing: you can tell as a pastor when you're enjoying a sermon when you're not thinking, how would I preach that sermon?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm not there thinking I wouldn't use that illustration.
Also, and you've spent the bulk of your career at big churches where you're not going to hear a text that another pastor you're on your staff preaches and then use that 6 months later.
Correct.
But typically, as someone who's spent the past 8 years as a solo pastor,
yeah.
Not only am I thinking, how would I preach that passage? It's when can I preach that passage?
Yeah,
it's sweet. He
just gave me a lot of work.
He's done half the exegetical work for me. This is great. Yeah, you don't get to play that card.
No.
Now, in a year and a half, you do.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I was even thinking about this. Is I think I know what the first sermon series I'm going to do when I plant my church, but I don't know when we'll do 1 Corinthians.
Makes sense. I'm trying to read CJ's comments. I didn't realize how small this screen was using this app. Apparently, Tim's eyes are better than mine. But CJ says, we're launching small groups. I'd love a practical episode on small groups, like a scaled-down version of the training you do for your leaders. I think that's a great idea. I don't know if it's this show or practically pastoring, or should we launch a 17th show where it's just a small group show. It's like a limited series.
Okay, that's a level of niche that even I would be bored with. That's too granular of the church.
The guy who did a What is a Campus Pastor podcast says small groups too boring.
No. You go on Apple Podcasts and search Campus Pastor. There's almost nothing. That fit a niche that was needed.
Have
small
you
groups.
Search up?
I'm sure Carrie Newhoff has a masterclass on that somewhere or something.
And you can too for $39.95 or whatever it is.
No, I like Carrie Newhoff. Don't hear that as an insult.
Yes,
but I guess let me say this. I am not the expert on small groups, but I will be glad on an episode to talk about what we did, because all I did was in my last church at Epicos, they had a really, really great small group ministry. And before I
call it robust.
Very robust. And before I left, I sat down with...
We scooted too far over.
I sat down with the 2 people who lead our small group ministry in last church, and I said, let me download every file you have. And I just took it all, and I'm just kind of just redoing what I did in my last church. So
I think that is a great idea.
It's awesome.
You can,
I'll share anything you guys want.
It's look how new and innovative, and you're like, churches.
For Lakeview, this is all new and innovative.
Yes.
I made a little packet. I even made a little logo in Canva, and people are like, I love the logo, and I'm like, I just made that in 5 seconds. In Canva.
So true story. I got a text from Tim because it was Saturday morning that you guys were doing the small group leader training, and it was Frank is so pro on stage. So Tim says very nice things to me about you behind your back.
Oh, that's sweet.
So
that's good.
It was he's killing it. And then it was also a picture of the computers, also the brand guide on Canva. Why isn't everybody using that? You have your church or your ministry, whatever, you set up the brand guide. So you have the fonts, you have the colors. And then
okay, every church.
And I said, this needs to be a breakout at Practically Pastoring next year. Here's the dumbest, easiest thing you can do with Canva to make you look so much more pro than you already are.
And not just let me tell you how pro this is so helpful. So in Canva, and I don't know if everyone understood that, Canva is like a free Photoshop, if you will, but it does more than just Photoshop.
They have a paid version, but they have a free version for nonprofits.
Yes, there's a free version for nonprofits.
I think you have 10 email addresses you can associate with
10 accounts you can have or something like that. But what's great about it is that you can make put text on photos a lot of people do. You can also make PowerPoints in there. You can also make documents really nice. But one thing that is really sweet is that you can have a brand guide where you can upload your colors, your fonts, and so you can get like a template. And with one button, it'll change the entire template's colors to match the
updates everything.
And it's like so sweet. It's so sweet.
So in theory, you could have a small group leader guide for Lakeview Church that you send up to CJ in Tennessee, and in one click, it matches everything.
It's so cool, man. It's so sweet.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah.
See, because we also wanted to talk about the new members class. It was the second time you've done a new members class at Lakeview, which is
second
kind of
time I've signed the members class.
The first time was the night before the first Practically Pastoring
Conference.
Conference.
Like 3 years ago.
And Frank and Jeff, and then I showed up towards the end. We're all like in the Lakeview new members class. But Tim and I use the same curriculum for our new members class. Like we wrote the thing together. He made the PowerPoint or the slide deck, whatever you call it, real pretty. And so it was a swap out their logo with our logo kind of thing.
But if you had Canva,
but if we had Canva at the time, it wouldn't have to necessarily be the same slide deck.
Yeah.
It's
pretty sweet.
But yeah, it's kind of funny because we wrote our small group curriculum together.
It's sweet.
We start with this great Matt Chandler video, and now you guys do it. How long was your new members class? Because I think we did ours last Sunday afternoon, and it was hour and a half. It was a smaller group. There were 5 new members. We're a smaller church. We were.
Did you guys eat together?
We did. We had pizza when they got here, so we had ordered pizza, but it was not the size of a group where like playing games or your icebreakers would have made sense. That would have been super awkward.
I would say it took roughly 2 hours. There was about 30 plus people there, and we ate.
Yeah.
It was like this really good lasagna and meatballs and the garlic knots. But yeah, I think 2 hours. We actually cut the game.
Okay.
We didn't do the icebreaker game they likes to do.
Yeah. Just because it was the icebreaker of eating was already
people were talking and we were like, and I told, and we and Tim talked about how we're not pressed for time, but like we decided just to cut it.
But it's you guys did it Thursday night.
That was an interesting choice. I don't think he's going to do it again. I think he's going to do it. I think we're going to try again on like a Sunday afternoon at like 3 or 4.
So yeah, ours was 4:30 Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, like that.
But so then you get food delivered. It's like, ooh, no one's quite hungry yet. But
save some money and have some light appetizers or something.
Yeah. Past hors d'oeuvres, just hire a caterer to come in and sir.
You know when you're at a wedding when they're trying to be cheap and they just have, instead of meals, heavy hors d'oeuvres, and it's like a lot of pigs and blankets.
I know exactly what you're doing.
They're really good though.
I love a bacon wrapped fig.
Sometimes heavy hors d'oeuvres is better than a full meal because you get a little variety.
Have you ever been to a wedding where it's like they're going all out, but you can tell that the restaurant or the venue isn't? I don't want to mention which one of my friends, but his name is Tim, and it's not Tim Miller. He got married at there's the fancy restaurant down in Dunedin called Bon Appetit. It's a French place, and one of the things you could choose was a filet. And so me and all the other grooms were like, heck yeah, we're getting a filet. And so there were like we had 2 best men, so it was me and our other buddy Todd. And so mine comes, it's like the size, a filet is not a big steak, but it's, the good size of a fist, and there's béarnaise sauce. I'm like, oh, heck yeah. And then Todd's comes, and it's like right next to mine, and it's the smallest little steak you have seen in your entire life. And he was so mad.
There's not much more disappointing when you're out with a bunch of guys and you get steak and you're like, you get a ribeye, I get a ribeye, and then you realize that the waiter chose you to get the smallest cut, and it's like
what?
Don't even bring this out.
Are you calling me
go
fat?
Get another one.
I know what you're doing, and it hurts my feelings.
We're at the same table. It's so frustrating.
Or again, the porterhouse versus the ribeye or whatever it is, and so, but when you just know that it's not consistent at the venue or whatever, someone's got to be that guy. But should it be the best man? Like, give it to the groomsman at the end of the table. Like the awkward cousin that's the obligation to be.
Yeah, the usher.
Yes. I wanted to bring this up with you. I was texting. Back in the day, we would cut to the Dylan cam, and he would be sitting right here. We had my buddy Dylan who worked with me for several years, and I was telling Frank this story. 3 years ago, he had applied for a full-time job. He was part-time here, and it was such a cool process because I was with him every step of the way. Like, I helped write his resume, and he went through this long interview process and went up to this church in Indiana, which is not a place you want to visit in January. Not like
it's pretty rough. It's cold.
It's cold, and it was like middle of Nowheresville, Indiana, like kind of Indiana Ohio border. but not south like by Cincinnati,
Okay.
like just like middle of nowhere, farm country. And so they flew him out, and he went through everything with the search team, and the search team's like, "Hey, you're our guy. We like you." He like met with a realtor kind of thing, like it was that kind of a trip. And then they said expect a job offer in a couple of days. He got home and got an email basically saying, "Hey, the search committee loved you. The elders, not so much."
Oh no!
And it was the last person in this role, or the last two people in this role. It was their first full-time job, and they didn't succeed. So we don't want to set you up for something that you won't be able to succeed in. So sorry, but it's not you. Well, less than 3 years later, that job is open again. And so
I will say, have you ever done that where like, well, I mean, you haven't applied to a ton of different jobs, but have you ever
not recently,
like applied to a church and then you're like, I'm gonna remember this,
yes,
and like check it out later?
There is one. Maybe I'll show you the next time we drive past it. So like when I was coming back from seminary, so this would have been 2011. There was a church that straight up told me like I was their candidate, and then the minute we talked money, it was maybe not, because they were wanting to hire like a 22, 23-year-old. And so they had me, who was like a 29-year-old, which sounds like it's not that big of a difference now as a guy in his 40s. But at the time, it was, hey, this is going to be like my third job. This is going to be my post-seminary job.
Yeah.
I have the same education level as the senior pastor.
They don't like that.
They don't like that. And so they hired a guy who I actually became good buddies with. And I think they had 3 full-time youth pastors in the 6 years I was at my previous church.
Wow.
And now they're down to like, I think they have like 2 part-time guys kind of sharing the role now, where it's been for the past couple of years. But they're about 3 miles from here. So
really?
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. So that's one that it wasn't just, it was funny because the guy that they eventually hired, it was like a mentorship kind of thing where he had reached out to me, hey, you know this community, you know these people, what do I do? So we would like meet for lunch. And so I was meeting him one day, and he at their church, and you know, whatever, I landed a better job at a healthier church, yada yada.
Yeah.
But so he introduces me to the pastor, who recognizes me but doesn't know where he recognizes me.
Oh, no.
And he's like, hey, this is my friend Andrew. He's mentoring me as we go through this. And like the pastor's like the light bulb went off, and I was like, oh, it was like, hey, good to see you again.
Yeah.
That was good.
That's really fun.
So yeah, we were Dylan and I were debating. Do you apply for that just to be like, nah, never mind, not actually interested. He's in a really good spot now. Like, But you don't send a resume to be like,
no, because here's the thing: there are people who do that, who get declined for a job, and then years later they see the job's open again and apply again, and it's because they haven't been able to do anything.
Yes, they haven't
that time
found.
Yeah, and like if he's in a good place, don't like. My guess, the way this sounds, is this church is like every resume that comes in, someone has to like look at it and go through that. Where like larger churches, they'll hire like a big company and they'll present them 3 candidates.
Or whatever the software is that looks at resumes.
Some AI is like determining where. Like I wouldn't bother boggling down, but it is something that's kind of like vindicating when it's like I applied and maybe I was green, but like I'm at this other place that took a chance on me and I'm doing well. It. And now they're looking for another person.
And the veteran that you hired and paid more than you would have paid me has left you in a lurch in the middle of a school year.
Oh, that's true.
You can't plan summer camp. You can't plan any. If your youth pastor leaves after Christmas,
that's
like what do you do?
You're kind of messed up.
You're kind of you are messed up, and you gotta kind of take somebody. But we got a good laugh at it, and it made me think. So I hadn't even thought about that one church until just now. But Frank, have you ever applied for a place that you thought you had it nailed and then it didn't go well?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a church in Seattle I applied to once, and I thought it went well, and then they told me, like, it was funny because I was very vulnerable with them, and it was through Slingshot Group.
Okay.
It was through Slingshot Group, and the feedback I got was that I was too vulnerable.
Do you feel like?
And I was like, that's a weird.
Had you ever done anything through Slingshot before?
That was the one and only time I ever used Slingshot to get a job.
I feel like Slingshot is the cooler version of Vanderbloemen.
Oh yeah.
It's like Vanderblumen's the BMW,
Yeah.
and Slingshot is the really souped up Civic.
Yeah.
Is that fair? Maybe
yeah,
not.
yeah.
That's not fair.
Yeah.
Maybe not. But
I don't know.
But it's like it's sleek, it's modern, but like in 5 years, Whereas something like Vanderblumen, they're going to be around.
Sure.
I don't know.
I have no negative comments about Slingshot, Vanderblumen, or
anybody who ever might want my resume. I have no comments. I have no name. But it's funny, like the way that the different organizations.
They're definitely marketed towards. I mean,
they're not they're marketed for churches where you might be able to get away with wearing jeans and a t-shirt on a Sunday morning.
Maybe,
whereas Vanderblumen is going to talk about a 401k, and you might have to wear clergy vestiges.
I mean, I've been on more of the
vestments
on the other side as like a person that's like hiring someone, and I've actually worked with chemistry staffing and Vanderblumen, and they're very different. But like, all that to say is, using them is much better than being just the person that's getting there's like random emails and DMs on Facebook.
Also, have you ever done a church staffing job post?
On church staffing?
Church staffing, if you want to sponsor us, we'll say wonderful things about you. But have you ever done a church staffing job post?
I've never done. I got a job through church staffing. Like
I've gotten a job through church staffing.
I've never been the other side.
This century, I think it has changed so much.
Yeah.
It's and again, we were looking for a part-time youth guy after Dylan left, and it's not cheap. It's like $300 for a month posting, and
it's expensive.
It's not cheap. And after like the first 6 hours, I was on like page 3. And so I'm like, how many people are, how much money? It's not like it's a good fancy site. It's a
practically jobs is coming soon. That we need to do that. We need to do that.
We should. But you get pushback, and then because it was not a full-time job, it was most of the emails I was getting was, can I get a green card if I apply for this job, kind of stuff. It was the people that are perusing the site are not exactly the candidates that you want.
Yeah. I will say that talking about interviews. Have you Dylan talked about how he interviewed and the interview didn't go well with the elders or whatever. But like I've had some really weird church interviews. I remember I'm not gonna say the name of this church, but it was a very, very, very large, prominent church in our country. That's how big I'm gonna be in the United States that I applied for. And I was still very green. It was right after my time here before I moved to Arkansas. So I was probably
we didn't even know each other yet.
We didn't quite know each other yet. I was like 25. So if I took this job, we wouldn't have met in Arkansas. So because I didn't live in Texas so at the time. So I applied to this church, and the thing I took away from it was like a very, very large church, prominent church in this country. None of the interview questions were about the Bible, or about my theology, or about church. It was like I was applying to Google. It was like, if an actor played you in a movie, what actor would it be? It was like literally those type of questions. And I was like, and then I found out.
It was like they hired HR professionals, not pastors, to.
Maybe, yeah. And then I found out more about the actual role, and I realized after the fact, because I have friends have worked in that church and in those roles, and I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I dodged. I'm glad I failed at that interview, because I would have hated it working there.
I think my most negative interview experience, I think, the one church where they basically said, "Hey, you're the candidate." I had one where the job offer was there and it just wasn't quite feeling right, and so I emailed the pastor and said, "Thank you so much." It hadn't been a long interview process, but it was, churches are weird, and so slow. But it had been maybe 5 or 6 weeks, and in that time, I was worshiping at Fellowship Church in Grapevine, because I was in seminary in Texas, and they had offered me a job paying way less to intern there, which was fit better with the seminary requirements, and theologically I kind of aligned better with them than this other church. And this other church, it was a church that had just kind of been through like a really good revitalization. They had been a group of 25, 30 people, and now they were like 75, 80 people, and were looking to hire just like the second staff member, and they were so kind, and it just wasn't going to be the right fit. Plus, on top of that, it was like it would have changed all of our patterns because of where it was located. So it would have been driving 30 miles east to go to church, and which we eventually ended up driving 60 miles west to go to church when I took a full-time job
I drive
in
pretty
Texas.
far to go to church right now. So anyway,
You don't drive 30 miles.
yeah, not 30 miles.
You might drive 30 minutes, but that's different in
I drove
Florida.
30 miles to get here today.
You did. But
Probably more than that.
But
too.
Texas is, everything is more spread out. So
sure.
it's a weird thing. So I emailed the pastor and was like, thank you so much for the offer. The more I think about it, the more I pray about it. I just don't feel like this is where God has me right now. And he sent me like the meanest email I have ever gotten. And it was how dare you trust your feelings over God's call if the church is affirming God's call? I was like, yeah, well, but if another church is calling me as well, then how do I,
which church takes over?
But I mean, it was, I remember getting that email and saying to Melissa, like, well, glad I didn't take this one because first time I messed something up, that would have been bad. But it was this really pretty, like, white wooden chapel overlooking what was a fake lake, but it was because all the lakes in Texas are built by the Army Corps of Engineers, but it was over in Rockwall, and they had a fiddle in the band because, as they say in the country song, if you want to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band.
Okay.
So it was, think historic white country Texas chapel with tight jeans and the guy playing the fiddle instead of instead of an electric guitar, it was acoustic fiddle bass drums. So it was that kind of scene, and it just wasn't.
Sounds like a church I would never apply to.
Well,
sounds like a church that wouldn't hire me.
I was gonna say it just wasn't a fit, and boy, did they take that.
They took it personally.
They took it very personally. I was like,
They really needed a youth pastor.
sorry,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you, but okay. I just tried to pull up our notes, and I definitely pulled up the wrong one. Frank, I don't know that we have discussed this.
Okay.
So you guys are in a series in Corinthians that will last
Till June.
for forever. It's a
long one.
It is a very long series. We don't do the very, very long series the way that Lakeview does, but we are in an 8-week series right now through Numbers. Obviously, we're not going through the whole book of Numbers in 8 weeks.
I'll give you this credit. I don't know many churches that go through the book of Numbers. So that's like,
It's
pat yourself on the back, Andrew. That's a good thing.
but it's kind of a sweet spot for me. And we've talked about this before, like, what types of passages you like to preach from. Mm-hmm. I love me an Old Testament narrative because there's like room to. I don't know who that guy is. There's someone just walking outside my office window. It's fine, whatever. There's room to interject a bit more of yourself, and the application points are not necessarily right there because, whereas the epistles, he's writing to a church, the application is obvious. But so we were with Balaam, and he's talking donkey in Numbers 22 yesterday.
Yeah.
And my worship leader said something to me like, so how much longer is this series? Because how do you choose songs when the text is,
I guess. I get
That's
tough. If you're a worship leader, you're like, what am I supposed to do
it's
with
like
this?
if the pastor really likes long Old Testament series, how Elevation's not writing a lot of songs.
Ironically, I think Elevation wrote a song called Exodus Song. And so when we're in Exodus, it's like perfect.
I was going to say an Exodus series makes more sense.
Or Honey in the Rock. Or it's about the...
But, there's water in the rock.
Yeah. So my question for you is...
That's Numbers and Exodus.
That's true. That's actually very true. So I'm actually walking with our worship person on this question. So when your worship person picks out songs for Sunday, are they just like is the only thing they get is the verses that you're preaching on? Or do you have a meeting with them? Do you send out to them themes?
I will show you the email that I sent Cheryl Wednesday night.
You've been streaming for 68 weeks.
There we go. That's something. So Numbers 22, 21 through 35, Balaam and the talking donkey. God uses unexpected means to redirect Balaam, highlighting his sovereignty over all plans and intentions.
And so February 28th was Thursday, right? Or Friday?
26th. So that was Wednesday.
Wednesday.
So that's what, like, my promise to her that I get right most weeks is, because I could give her and it's a husband and wife that lead worship together.
Yep.
But so she's the better emailer. So, and I always say, like, I could give you the verses weeks in advance, but like a 1-sentence summary.
Yeah.
That's,
that you took your sermon manuscript, put GPT
No,
in, like,
I didn't have
write me something. So
I
can
did
do
not
my
have the
worship
sermon manuscript done at 6 p.m. on Wednesday.
Right.
But so that's kind of what I give as here's a 1-sentence summary. I also typically, when we're doing a new series, I'll give like a paragraph summary at the beginning of a series.
Okay.
Hey, here's where we're going. Here's what I'm thinking. So right now we're calling it In Between.
Yeah,
because
good
it's. Thank you. I was pretty proud of it.
That's a good name.
I'm also. Have you seen the graphic?
How you gonna put this on there?
I could. I'd have to export something.
Don't do that.
But
Anyway, it's a good graphic. I like it.
But,
I like
but
everything
it's
about it. It's good.
It's all with word swag. Did you ever use the word swag app?
Yeah. I mean, it's just
so bad.
Yeah, I get it. It's funny.
But it's.
Have you ever heard of this thing called Canva?
I have.
We just
I have.
laughed about it.
Canva is great for. For a solid graphic.
Yeah.
I have trouble with navigating Canva. If I was doing like a bunch of slides, if I'm doing a slide deck or something, sure. But I need a title slide and I need a content slide. You have all of the free images that you can get with WordSwag.
You can make slides
it works.
in Canva.
I'm sure you can.
But so on Wednesday you're giving her the 1-sentence thing, and that's kind of the full extent.
And that's So again, we do more. At the beginning of a series, it's, hey, here's where the series is going. Here are some of the main themes.
Yeah.
But for the week to week, it's just that. So you were saying that you walk with Sarah through.
We're trying to create a rhythm of like how far advanced. Like right now, we did the creative planning meeting.
So what City Lights is, I love this. It's because they are a more liturgical church, so it's not based on the theme necessarily of what's being preached, but the time of the year. That makes it probably a lot easier on everybody.
Yeah.
I don't think he's really. I don't. That was scary. Hang on. We lost something.
We're back. Is he related to Dominic, the Italian Christmas donkey?
He is not. I'm sorry, you had to look at my face so zoomed.
It was a
in.
jump scare.
That was terrifying. No, we had a short and a quarter or something, but. I said, like, I wish that, I knew what the donkey sounded like, because in my head, all I can hear is Eddie Murphy in Shrek.
That's funny.
And
don't do an Eddie Murphy impersonation.
I did not do an Eddie Murphy impersonation. But I think when I said that, then everybody else like heard it in their head as well.
That's funny.
And
okay, yeah.
it went very, very well.
So we're trying to create a rhythm, and my hope is that like we can. I think Tim and I, especially since we're sharing the pulpit, we can get ahead at least by like a week or two, and I think we can give her more content for at least
more than a 1-sentence summary,
where one song can specifically connect to the message. If all 3 songs do, that's great. But yeah, like last week we did a creative planning meeting with her and Tim and I and a couple other people for our May 30th 30-year anniversary, and we're like what we're doing, and that's like very different because we are like trying to find songs from every era of Lakeview. So we're doing like a classic 90s song.
Yes, Lord, yes,
I wish.
yes, Lord.
I think How Great Is Our God is gonna be played.
I'm trading my sorrows. Ooh, do you have a trumpet player? You could get Days of Elijah in there.
No, I want to do
That'd be great.
What's that song like? I'm blanking on the song. It's like sing Ancient of Days. Ancient of Days is
my
banger.
jam.
Sing unto the. It's like a good bass. You have a good bass player. It's great. But anyways, so now next up, what we're going to talk about is Good Friday and Easter, and we're trying to. I mean, we can get ahead of that by like it's like 40. Easter is 46 days away.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, this is Ash Wednesday.
Yeah, it is this week. So we're trying to get ahead, and I would love, like in my last church, we were so far ahead that we knew all the songs that were going to be sung a month out.
See, I don't like that though.
Why?
I don't know. And you can smack me over this, but
I will never smack you.
Good, because you would break me. But a month out, fine, I guess. Like if you have like the 1-sentence summary of a sermon or a couple paragraph, here's where the sermon is going.
And even if you haven't like done a ton of work on it, I feel like you can probably get an idea of what you're gonna do or what the theme is. But then if you're an expositional church.
But then what happens if you have to pivot? Like if there's
then the worship team pivots.
If there's a riot in your city because you lived in Milwaukee, and you've got 18-year-olds with guns killing people.
Yeah.
Hypothetically.
Yeah.
Let's just say hypothetically that happens.
That happened, and we did it. We pivoted. I mean, so like the good news about being a month out is that with that sermon series where we had to pivot, we pushed the sermon series over 4 weeks.
Okay.
And so all that work is now locked in.
So you didn't lose it.
No.
Okay. That makes.
But I mean, I think like.
So you're not married to the 4 weeks. It's planning.
Yeah, we're trying to plan it, and like the thing is, it's like. The worship team, it's if you have people who are like practicing at home and stuff like that, they're able to be able to like know ahead of time, okay, I'm not scheduled for 3 weeks and I've never heard the song before. I got to practice it.
I get that.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's interesting to consider what you guys are doing.
I didn't even. So here's the thing. Tim's been playing quarterback since we switched to this software about a year and a half ago. I didn't realize that there were more comments. I'm sorry, everybody.
I'm here to play Tim, big quarterback.
CJ is going to finish Matthew in July. Took a break for Advent. It'll be 18 months. That's a long series. That is a very long series. I don't know that I could do it that way.
Good for you, CJ.
See, hey, that's great. I was just about to suggest, do you think it makes sense to have like a song, be like, hey, this is like the theme song for the series? Or can you only do that if you're doing a month-long series? Because if you're doing an 8-week-long or a 18-month-long series, singing the same song once a week for 18 months might cause people to revolt.
I don't think you do it every week. I think if you have an 18-month series, you can maybe pick 1 or 2 songs that will be the theme of the series, and you'll do maybe the first 2 Sundays, do them back to back, take a 3rd week off, bring it back the 4th week, and just kind of like literate. Is that the right word? Scatter it throughout the whole series. If you're doing a 1-month series,
then you can do the song every week.
Yeah, that's fine.
The church that I grew up in, they do this thing where they have a they have a verse of the month and a verse of the year. Yeah. So during like what we do as a call to worship, they have the whole congregation stand up it's on the projection screen, and this is our verse of the month, and then here's our theme verse for the year. I've always thought would it be cool to do that for hey, here's our song of the year. This is like the thing that we're.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to claim that a modern worship song is equal to worship or to equal to scripture in any way, but the idea of as we are going through this series, we are talking about God's faithfulness in the times when we're in the desert or whatever.
I've known so many churches that do like a word of the year or a phrase of the year where they're like, our goal this year is to make sure there is a small group in every neighborhood in our city. And so like if you can do that, why can't you do it?
Here's the thing. I don't know Dominic the Christmas Donkey.
I've never heard of it.
I have no idea what this is. This is what we're gonna have to look up over lunch because I have no idea what this is.
We're gonna look it up.
And we'll reenact it. And that's not true.
We're not going to reenact it. But we'll listen to it.
We won't do that. Do you think there are some passages where you should just be like, hey, worship team, do you? There's no...
Oh, of course.
There's no need to choose your songs based on what we're preaching.
I mean...
Because, hey, everybody, we're talking about church discipline.
I mean, I bet you can find like more meta narrative themes in that you could probably like God caring for us through discipline or whatever. But like I think the reality is every church should have about 20 to 25 songs or 24 songs, whatever number you want to use, as like a repository of these are the songs that we're going to consistently sing over and over again, spread out through the year, and then you introduce 1 or 2 songs maybe every 4 to 6 months or something like that.
Yeah, I've seen that as well.
But like what I think is, I mean, this is the great thing about hymns is like
that's exactly what a hymnal is,
and it's like whether we do it every year or once every 3 years, you just open the book and you can kind of follow the melody, and the melody is not going to be difficult. But like if you are more of a contemporary service where you're doing modern songs, I think that having a repository of like 24 songs is good, and then you're kind of forced. Like if you're in a series of like 1 Corinthians or Numbers, then like maybe add some new songs that way. But I wouldn't. Man, I get nervous when I hear about churches like doing a new song every week or something like that.
CJ says, not sure who I heard say this, but one pastor said his first sermon series at a new church was over Romans with a break for Easter and Advent. He did Romans for 8 years.
Isn't that Piper? Didn't Piper I think
Maybe.
I think John Piper
It
did
wasn't
that.
me. And then he says, how long do you aim for a series to be?
Romans is. Here's the thing: 8 years is too long.
You're
getting really granular. You're like doing like singular verses.
That's why I have trouble preaching the epistles, because
I could spend the whole time.
I like doing about a chapter a week. I feel like, or maybe 10 or 12 verses. But if you're going through Romans, you can't get through Romans 1, and you can't get through Romans 1 in a month.
Here's my conviction on this, and maybe you'll slap me over the head on this.
I would not break you the same
digitally
way.
Will
You're bigger and stronger than me. It's okay.
So I believe in exegetical expositional preaching. So I do believe in like going verse by verse, chapter by chapter through books of the Bible. I'm not against topical preaching. I think there's a place for like a Christmas series, like an Advent series. And I'm also thinking that there's a place for like a special 4-week series on a particular topic that's important. But when I'm thinking about how I'm going to break down the text, I don't think I need to try to preach on every single theme that needs to be pulled from it. When I hear 8 years in Romans, what I hear is, as I'm reading this chapter, whatever theme is coming out needs to be its own sermon. And what I'm thinking of, if I have 12 passages of scripture and there's a verse that like is like probably the most important verse that my people need to hear from that time, there might be other themes in that chapter that might be really important, but like I'll talk about it another day through another text, or when we get back to Romans 8 years from now, I'll bring it back up again. But like I don't feel like I have to. I don't think the point of a sermon is to do an exhaustive study on every theme from that passage. That's what like Bible studies are for.
Dylan, yes, we talked about it. Frank doesn't think you should apply because it's going to waste someone's time. I still think being petty is kind of funny in this situation.
Okay, here's what we do. If there's a Facebook post and they're looking for a job, I like it. Yeah. that's a level of petty I'm okay with, but I wouldn't send a resume in.
So I think that I don't think there's like an exact right number for how long a sermon series should be. My thing is, and one of the reasons that I try to have a compelling title slide for a sermon series is my hope. I don't think anyone is going to remember a sermon that I preached a year from now, but what I hope is that when they see that image, that there's like a 1-sentence summary of they can say, oh, we've been, the Numbers series. When I think of Numbers, I should think that God is at work even when it feels like He's not.
That's good.
So for a series, for an 8-year series, that's too long.
And you're also like, there's no way of having that follow through line for 8 years.
Yeah,
you're gonna like. I'll say this.
There are people that left that church, joined another church, became an elder. That other church blew up, and they came back, and you were in the same sermon series.
Literally, that's great. I would say this, like, if you want a hard number, I personally feel like a series shouldn't go longer than a year.
Matt says that's why home groups are imperative. I think that's, yeah.
Yeah, like what's great about it is that you can get more granular in a passage. Like, hey, the pastor didn't talk about this, but this verse talks about this. What do you guys think about? Like, that's exactly what small groups are for. I would say, like, I wouldn't do more than 18 months. Like, I think that's more than enough time. And even then, though, you're going to be forced to take breaks with like Easter and Christmas and things like that. But I would say, like, there's a certain capacity that your people can have. But you just said something that's really important. And it was through like us and Tim and the other guys on the other podcast that have made me think about this more, is that I think as a pastor and a preacher, we have grander views of our sermons than what's actually landing on the people. And so, like, use the illustration of like, you're just trying to get on base. You're just trying to do a single. And it's like, I look at sermons as very disposable. And what I mean by that is like, on a Sunday, my only goal is to put another credit into your account of you conforming into the image of Jesus. And like, you won't remember my sermon in a month, but there might be a theme or somewhere you felt that like has helped you become more like Jesus. And it's going to be more like felt than remembered. And so, yeah, there might be people in your church that might not remember Numbers 10 years from now, but they will remember somehow in the scope of those 8 weeks that they can trust God even when it feels like He's not there. Like, that's the win. Does that make sense?
And that's kind of I think that's the goal for any sermon series. And again, it's like, you're getting on base, single, double, whatever it is.
8 years of getting on base is sick.
Yeah,
but like,
could you imagine the streak?
Yeah.
And they say that a home run is a streak, killer. But at the same time, what can your people remember at the end of that? Like, what is and maybe that's just way too much pragmatism, but I want whatever series it is, I want someone to have can you summarize what we talked about for these 4 or 5 weeks?
Yeah. I mean, I think like, I know when you have super long series like that, like even if you have like an 18-week series, you can probably, like if it's the book of Matthew, you could probably break them up into like multiple series over the course of the book. And that way it feels like instead of having one series over 18 months, you might have 3 series.
Or, which
is much more manageable.
Matthew's, perspective on the Advent. Then you go into the Sermon on the Mount, and and then you can do miracles in Matthew. So that's kind of where I'm. Matt says preaching is like giving a book report in school. This happens, and because of that, this happened. If you want to know more, read the book. Kinda. Yeah. It's kind of
that isn't it funny if you like were to boil down preaching, like if you ask a non-Christian what is preaching, it's like a guy is giving a presentation on a book you read every week.
Yeah, that's
and in many ways there is some similar skills of like
what I've explained to whether someone in a coffee shop or whatever. It's like what do you do? I'm like, I essentially give a graduate level lecture that I can only give once. Yeah, because it's not. If I was teaching a class, you put in all this work and then you get to do that same thing again in 15 weeks. Yeah. So I'm giving a graduate level lecture for one session once a week for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It's a pretty great gig, if we're being honest.
And the lecture can't be dry. It has to be somewhat engaging. And
you got to talk about Eddie Murphy.
You got to talk about Eddie Murphy, yeah.
Frank, I was listening to the Severance podcast on my drive-in.
I've listened to the podcast. I love the show so much.
I finally got caught up this weekend.
Oh,
so
that last episode was hard to watch a little bit. This is going to turn into a Severance podcast. This is great.
But so at the end of it, I just started listening to the Severance podcast because now I'm caught up on the show.
Yeah.
And so it's Ben Stiller and Adam Scott. And at the end of it, they had like a list of 30 people that were helping them on the show, full of Frank's dance moves.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was, this person was an audio producer, this person was a content producer. So they had, I kid you not, it felt like a 2-minute list reading of all the people who were helping them on a 2-person podcast talking about a show they had made.
Oh, wow.
I feel like we're doing pretty good for just the two of us. We don't have any production assistants. There's the sound mixing and mastering is happening live. I hope it sounds okay.
But imagine if you were at, like the perk about Ben Stiller and Adam Scott is they just walk in, and talk,
and like they watched the episode, they took some notes, but also they have an intern that's like handing them a portfolio of here are all these stats and facts about the show. How great would that? Could you imagine how good of a podcast we would have if we had people that were like, hey, we like the way you sound on a microphone. Also, I hate the sound of my recorded voice, yet I do this.
Yeah.
Yet I talk into microphones for hours every week. But you have someone that just comes in and says, hey, here you go.
Yeah. I mean, that would be really sweet if we could just like.
We're now hiring a practically pastoring intern.
Yeah. I showed up an hour before this and we were talking about how small this desk is.
Yeah,
like, that's literally what we've been doing.
Also, my butt's falling asleep in these chairs. These aren't my regular office chairs, and it's a whole thing.
Yeah, I agree. The last episode of Severance was one of the greatest episodes of television I've ever seen.
So,
so good. It's also that last episode was really sad.
It was really good. It was really sad, but my Instagram Reels feed and my TikTok is now nothing but Severance stuff because my wife doesn't TikTok, so she'll get on my phone and look up Severance stuff.
That's funny.
To get people's theories, and so now it's just
you and your wife and me and my wife need to just have like a FaceTime on like Saturdays. I'm
ready.
This is literally turning into just me and Andrew talking.
We're gonna get lunch here in a minute. So this
episode, we should like watch it together.
Watch party?
A watch party.
I love it.
And everyone brings Severance themed appetizers.
What would be a Severance themed appetizer?
Like a watermelon.
I was like
the
Irving one.
Anyways, no one cares about this. Hey, we gotta get lunch.
We cared deeply. I'm gonna see if I can switch to this. I think I did it, Frank. I think there's music playing in the background. I didn't mess anything up too terribly bad. And we only cut to the super close-up shot of my face one time.
That's impressive.
So all in all, Tim, we don't need you.
Oh, man.
We don't need you. We love you.
I need you. You need to send my paycheck.
Hey, we'll see you next week.
Bye.